What's the Celebrity Apprentice like for you?
Doug, what's happening, man? It was fun. It's a game, and it's the ultimate game. I've really never had more fun. And people that understood that had a great time, and the people that weren't familiar with it got their feelings hurt and were a bunch of babies about it. But the people that got it had a great experience.
Who was the biggest baby?
Lisa Leslie by far. I just think she just didn't understand what we were doing. I'm sure she could be a perfectly nice person. She wasn't made for that.
It's weird because she's like the most accomplished athlete on the show. You would think that she would totally kind of understand the competitiveness, the game aspect of it, and yet she shied away from any of that.
Yeah, and see, I fully agree with you. And her ability to lead, she won all those medals. It's like, gosh, she must have been in a leadership position at some point, but it just was not her skill set. And as a follower, forget about it. She was a very interesting one. But from a competitive standpoint, she was trying. She didn't know which way was up.
All right, so was there anybody that you made a friendship with that you're like, now you text them all the time because of it?
Yeah, there are several people that we've stayed in very good contact. John Lovitz would be at the front of that pack. John Lovitz was just a great human being. It's always disappointing. Anybody that considers himself a celebrity is really just a prick in real life, and so it's nothing but disappointment being around those people. In most cases, John was an exception.
What was Boy George like?
He was cool. George was fun, and he was a real straight shooter. You always knew what he was thinking. There was no poker face. There was no gamesmanship. He just put it forward. I had a lot of fun with George.
Wait, so doesn't Lovitz carry like a dog with him, like a little tiny dog everywhere he goes?
Yes, Jerry Buckheimer III is the name of his dog, and yes, everywhere he goes, he loves that animal more than I could explain. He's a very good pet owner. He's just a good guy, man. Lovitz was great.
No, we've had him on before. He's one of those people that you listen to every word he says because you're just assuming what the next thing he says is funny, and you almost don't know. Exactly. Like, one, if I laugh, am I laughing at the right thing? And then two, if I laugh, will that take me away from the next thing he says, which is even going to be funnier?
Doug, that was my experience, too. Every time he spoke, I would just laugh, and he looked at me and was like, you're a really good audience. I wish I could take you everywhere. But which I laughed at that. I just assumed if he's saying that he's a comedian, it must be funny.
Yeah, Chael Sonnen joining us in the Doug Gottlieb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Okay, so let's get to Bellator. You're getting back in the octagon, but a different company. Although, wait, aren't you an analyst, a UFC analyst? Like, how does that work to where you're no longer fighting in UFC, but you're still analyzing UFC?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I officially work for ESPN, and they will cover anything MMA. They'll cover boxing if it's a big fight. They're very selective, and so UFC does get a lot of coverage over there. So sometimes it is misinterpreted that I'm a UFC analyst. Yep. My official title is an MMA analyst.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Bellator. How much? I think the question is, how much do you have left in the tank? Like, you have so many other interests, and you've been able to use your level of stardom to get you on Celebrity Apprentice, get you other opportunities on TV. How much do you actually have left in the octagon?
Yeah, you never know, and that's not a new point in my career. Becoming a veteran of the sport as opposed to a newcomer. You never knew as a newcomer. Sports are for kids, and if you're able to extend your career and go out there and stay involved, it's one of those things where you don't want to leave anything on the table and look back and wonder, well, what could have I done or what memories could have I built? So we do see athletes that typically stay in their fields too long. Nobody grabs them and tells them, hey, it's over. So I'm very aware that there is an expiration date, but I'm not approaching mine yet, man. I'm just getting started.
I know, but dude, there's never been a boxer that doesn't go out on his back. It's the same thing. Bernard Hopkins and he literally fell out of the ring. We just saw Ronda Rousey and what happened to her. She takes 13 months off. And she gets knocked out. Obviously, hers is not age. It's more. It feels like she's moving on to something else. Like, isn't that the fear though? Like Tito Ortiz is legit, dude. Like, you don't want to go out your last fight being one in which somebody has to take you out on a gurney.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said, and you certainly don't want to. I can just tell you the history of most fighters. That's exactly how they go out. To use your phrase, they go out flat on their back. But I think that's the way a guy ought to go out. That's how you know you didn't leave anything on the table. I'm not near that point, But I do think that that's probably in my future. I think I will be one of those guys that sticks around. I love it. I love doing it. I love the process. I love talking to you about the process. So, I'm hooked, man. I'm a junkie, and this is the game that I know how to play.
Bellator 170 Ortiz Sonnen takes place January 21st. You're upcoming this weekend at the Forum in L.A. Airs live and free on Spike TV, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central. Going against MMA Hall of Famer and SoCal's own Tito Ortiz. And that's the thing about Tito. He's a bad boy, but in being his hometown, what are your thoughts on the split in the crowd?
Yeah, the crowd can shove it up their ass. I couldn't possibly carry their way, whether they're cheering or booing. I'm a heel, man. Boos are a heel cheer. So, whatever they want to do. It brings me pleasure to come into his hometown and beat him up in front of his friends and family. I have a really black heart when it comes to competition. I don't care about him, his sacrifices, or his goals. I'm out for number one, and I think that's the only way to compete.
Dude, my son's gotten into wrestling. He's 7 years old. He won his first tournament. He got second. He pinned a kid, but he got pinned. And I mean, he freaking loved it. When you grew up in like Westland, Oregon, right? That's like suburb of Portland. Like, could you ever imagine? When you're growing up and you're wrestling, could you ever imagine what this has led to?
No, and congrats to your son. First off, that's awesome that he's doing that at a young age of 7. And secondly, congrats on the success of his first win. But no, this wasn't even a dream of mine. It didn't exist when I was 7 years old and growing up. Let's see, that would have been about 1985. The UFC didn't come out until 1993, and MMA as a whole really didn't make it until 2005. So no, it was never a dream, but that's only because it didn't exist.
Yeah, when did you first hear about it? Like, I remember, I'm going to say like 15 years ago. Like, I remember hearing about the Gracie boys. And but when did somebody say, like, hey, dude, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, this is kind of the future? When did you first hear that this was the next thing?
In 1993, and it was on VHS. We had to go down to the store and rent it, and then take it to my buddy Jeff's house.
All right, so wait. So this is like did you go to Blockbuster, a warehouse? Where was this?
No, I went to some off-brand mom and pop store that had it. The UFC, they didn't even carry it in a lot of stores. They deemed that it was too violent. It was actually hard to even get back then. And they might have been right. It was pretty violent back then. There was no weight classes, no gloves, there was no rules.
It's like blood. It was like the movie. It was like the movie Bloodsport come to life, right?
That's exactly what they tried to do. Yeah, and the Gracies did it largely to market their brand of martial arts, which is known as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they kind of used it as a marketing piece, and it was quite successful, and then it really evolved from there. But I was hooked the second I saw it. I found it fascinating. I didn't see the gore in it. I saw the competitiveness.
Okay, so this is 93. You're in high school. Who are the guys you were hanging with at the time?
I was at my buddy Jeff's house. We went down, we rented it, took it up to his parents' place, put it in the old machine and watched it. And, I was a junior in high school. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that's what I want to participate in.
That's amazing. Okay, there's more of this talk of Mayweather and McGregor and a boxing match. I just, look, they're different disciplines. And I know that McGregor's a good striker, but you're talking about one of the best boxers in the history of the sport, the best pound-for-pound fighter, whatever you think of his style. It's his discipline. Do you think that makes for a good fight?
Yeah, I do. I don't know that would be an ultra-competitive fight. If that fight is competitive, that is very bad for the entire sport of boxing. To take a guy like Conor McGregor, who has never done it ever on an amateur or professional level, put him in there with the greatest of all time, and then have a competitive match is a problem for boxing. But I'll tell you, man, boxing has some problems. And I am a former boxer. I love boxing. I can tell you this. I was 28 years old when I met my first boxer. I lived at the Olympic Training Center when I was 23 years old. They had a boxing program, and I still never met a boxer. I don't know anyone in my family that boxes, anyone in my school that boxes, anyone in my neighborhood that boxes. I could take it a step further, and I know I'm representing all of your listeners right now. I just said that, every one of your listeners going,
nod in your head.
I've never met a boxer.
I'll give you a perfect example. Okay, so my son in Trumbull, Connecticut last weekend, he goes to second wrestling tournament, and there's 500 kids. Okay, it was 250 the week before in like some Colchester, some obscure town. Like wrestling has seen a reemergence because of UFC. No, who knows anybody who boxes? Like it's such a, especially American boxers. It's so niche as opposed to this is like the next step for high school, college wrestlers, and then go to MMA afterwards.
Yeah, Doug, and I could take it a step further. I could challenge any one of your listeners to tell me of a boxing gym that they know of. Not one of them can raise their hand right now. I'll go a step further and tell your listeners, if I give you 5 hours and I need you to go to a store and buy boxing gloves and a mouthpiece, what store are you going to go to that sells it? Nobody knows, man. It doesn't exist. If you want to be a top 10 boxer in the world, raise your hand because there's not 10 other guys in each weight class that are doing it. It's a really rare sport. So is Floyd great? Yeah, he's great at a sport that nobody does, and I'm not bagging on Floyd. I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's great. Do you think it happens? Do you think the fight actually happens?
I do, and I'm in the rare field. Call me a conspiracy theorist. Look, the history of fighting, the hardest part is getting the two athletes to agree. They've got the athletes to agree. They've got the media behind it. They've got the mandate of the masses behind it. The easiest thing to do historically is to get a promoter to say, okay, I'm in. That's the part that we're missing right now. We can't figure out who would control the promotion. Is it Floyd or is it Dana or is it a co-promote? And they don't seem overly interested in making it happen. But historically, if you have the two talents together and they want to do it, they do it.